I'm in prison for 12 years. Regardless of my circumstance, I got back to doing things that I loved when I was a child, when I was the happiest the most. And that was running, singing, art. And when I was doing it just to bring joy to other people's lives. I'm going to say it again. It's very important that you get this. When I was taking what I loved as a child, when I was the happiest the most, an inmate says, every time you sing, it makes me feel free. So I was singing to bring joy to somebody else's life.
So the question is this: how do thought leaders, school dropouts, former and current students find out what's next after they do or don't cross that stage? If you want to know the secrets to starting the career or business of your dreams, getting paid whatever you desire, and discovering what you do the best with the least amount of effort, then this is the right podcast for you. I'm Shawn Anthony, and this is School's Over, Now What? The podcast. Welcome to School's Over, Now What? The podcast, and I'm your host and brand strategist, Shawn Anthony. Guys, if you have never checked out a single episode before, let me break it down a little bit about what we do. Each and every single week, we continue to bring you an inspiring person or a message that's going to help take you to the next level and most certainly answer the question we've all asked ourselves at some point in our lives, and that's school's over, now what? And ever since we launched this show, it has continued to get thousands of downloads each and every single episode, and we're constantly ranked in the top 100 in the business podcast category. And if you've never, had the time to kind of figure out how many podcasts that are circulating out there, there's over 700,000 podcasts. So we are forever grateful that you guys keep us in such a top spot on iTunes. This podcast will be nothing without you. With that being said, let's kick this thing off with the review of the week. And it comes from Kirsten Allen. And she wrote, I love starting my mornings listening to this podcast. I understand true motivation comes from within. However, after listening to the podcast, I leave feeling motivated, inspired, dedicated. For me personally, I can truly relate to the title of the podcast, School's Over, Now What? Because I just finished college and often find myself asking, what's next? This podcast reminds me to keep pushing through and chase my dreams. Kirsten, we appreciate, you just checking this out. First off, congratulations. And like so many people that listen to this show, we appreciate those students who continue to grow after college is over. That is a major key to success. So let's get into the reason you clicked that button today. And I know you've seen the many crazy interviews we've had on this show, but this one's epic. We feature none other than Garrain Jones. This guy went from being in prison to being a multi-millionaire. And we talk about so many things on this particular episode, but what I like the most is it really comes down to your mindset. Your mind and your thoughts truly determine where you feel like you are in life. And at any given moment, you can flip the switch and program yourself to seeing things in a completely different way. If you're driving right now, trust me, you're going to want to save this episode because you're going to come back to this one. But if you're standing still, go ahead, grab out the pencil, slide out the notebook paper, or type up whatever notes you need, because this is going to be one you will never forget. Ladies and gentlemen, episode 69, change your mindset, change your life, with Garrain Jones. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here with my guy. We're ready to get him on the show. He is the king of all things positive thinking. Garrain, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Man, this is awesome, man. Like, so people that are trying to get familiar to your story, they're looking you up on Instagram right now. I think your story is incredible. And I want to be able to tell that for the audience today. But it all starts to your upbringing and where you're from. And I know you're back in Houston, Texas, right? Tell us a little bit about your life and just coming up as a child.
So coming up as a child, first off, I thought everybody lived like me. So I didn't know that being broke, your lights cutting off, your mama lighting up candles, finding a way to run extension cords through the house so the electricity can go up, having free lunch. I didn't know that that was an abnormal thing. I thought everybody lived like that until I started to go over some friend's house who had money. And I'm like, Mama, how come we don't have this? How come we don't have that? And seeing how my mom was, her shoulders would bowl over and you can see the shame, what I now know is shame. But I struggled because people picked on me just for being different and thinking different. And, we moved around maybe like 15, 16 times, so there was no stability in my life. My father was murdered when I was 12 years old, alcohol, drug dealer, always broke promises. So no stability in my life. A lot of people just picked on me. I didn't start puberty till I was 18 years old. So I was a little kid for a long time. And all the girls would say, oh, you're like my little brother. So I couldn't even get anybody. Like I would like a girl, but they would never like me. Plus I was in and out of juvenile. Plus I was failing.
Wow, man. That's so crazy. Because when you look at, you and your story, that's so like, you don't know what you have or what you're supposed to be, especially when you're not seeing it, right? So when you start crossing over and seeing your friends live a certain way, like, how did that make you feel knowing you didn't have those things?
So I just was like, how come my mom doesn't have the money? And I was putting all this blame on my mom. Now, see, my mom, I don't know if she knew that she created a young entrepreneur monster back then. She was like, I'm not about to buy no $185 Jordans. When you can make your own money, you can buy whatever you want. So what I did, lemonade stand, washing cars, mowing lawn, but I did it and I had people working for me at the lemonade stand, washing cars with me. My mom used to joke around and say, you would wash everybody's car with the same dirty water. But see, I didn't know by my mom saying that I'm not going to buy this for you. When you can find a way to do it, you can buy whatever you want. So at 5 years old, I was making my own money.
Wow.
Fast forward 30 some odd years, I'm an entrepreneur, several different companies, 7-figure income in several different companies. It's the tools that I learned when I was 5, 6, and 7. I just never stopped.
Yeah. And what I like about that is that so many people, they try something at a young age, not realizing, hey, this might work out for me later on in the future. And if you look at, your life and you look at your story, right? When you go to like those teenage years and you got to like 13, right? Tell me a little bit about like that transition. How was it for you? Learning what you've learned, learning how to hustle. Did you find yourself getting addicted to trying to make money?
So the deal is I got addicted to getting what I wanted. So if it was making money to get what I want, then it was never being addicted to money. It was being addicted to, I want this, so I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get it. Even if it means breaking your house, breaking your car, break into the school, break into a cop car I did one day. Sorry if you're watching. What is it called? Break into the concession stand where they play basketball, stealing it for $4 for $1. I was like, I didn't know that was called hustling. I just got addicted saying, I want those patent leather, white patent leather, baby blue Jordans. Oh, yeah. My mama not going. So I'm going to skip first class and figure out a way to go get them the very next day.
So it's almost like the thrill of seeing what you want, right? Visualizing it and having it. And now you kind of flipped it towards, a positive mindset, and when you were going through, 13 to actually go on to like 18 into those years, I think your life story is amazing between that gap of pretty much those teenage years and 32. Tell us a little bit about like that gap for you. What happened in your life to get to where you are today?
So that's when I started getting in a lot of trouble though. So I was going to have this thing called alternative school where you take the bad kids at public school and you put them where all the other bad kids are. And so I was in and out of juvenile for breaking into cars, breaking into houses, being on probation and still breaking into cars, breaking into houses because I wanted what I wanted. It was I have a very addictive personality. I just know where to put it now. But back then I had no guidance. There was nobody to say, read this book. or go this way because my dad wasn't around. At the time, my brother was too cool to hang out with me. And my mom, though she was working hard, she was never around. So I didn't have that guidance. So I just did what everybody who wanted to hang out with me, which was the trouble kids, would do. So that's in and out, failing grades, in and out of juvenile, in and out of alternative school. Well, naturally, if you understand how ABCs works, so you learn ABCs, that translates to words. That turned to sentences, to paragraphs, to essays, to books, to libraries. And if you could see what happens if the impact of ABCs and how it evolves, well, imagine the impact of stealing and the impact of all those things, and you continue on that mindset. Listen, it's not going to stop. It's going to be the evolution of whatever that thing is that you keep on, that you keep giving energy to. It's energy goes where energy flows. So from 13 all the way into my 20s, I had the mindset of, like, I don't care if it's right or if it's wrong. There's no remorse. I'm going to get what I want. And I was in and out of juvenile, all those different things. Then when I got 19, 20, somebody gave me an opportunity that I just couldn't refuse to drive a vehicle from one border onto a ferry to another border from the UK to Rotterdam, carrying some stuff that parents wouldn't be proud of. And then after the 8th time, I got busted. 6.2 kilos of heroin, the most anti-drug person you'll ever meet. Never had a sip of alcohol in my life. However, I just got busted with drugs, and then they sentenced me to 12 years in prison, and I ended up doing 2.5.
Wow. And I think it's all about, for me, what you're feeding yourself with from a mindset standpoint and who you're surrounding yourself with, right? You're hanging around the wrong crowd. You start doing the wrong things. But what I learned, just by, observing is that if you take, a different mindset of learning, right? Reading books, right? You can kind of elevate and put yourself in a different place. So you were sentenced to 12, right? So the audience gets more of the story. You're sentenced to 12. You do 2 years. What were you doing in that 2-year time span, and why did you get out so early?
So this is fascinating because, this is a true testament that outside anyone or anything doesn't have the final say so. You actually have the final say so. So when I was in prison, I just remember saying to myself, what can I do in here that I wouldn't normally do out there? See, in prison, all you got is time. And it's like 1 minute is like an hour in there if you're watching the clock. So all I had to do is time. So I had to keep my brain occupied. So all I did is I started reading books. I read over 275 books, but each book I read more than 5 times. You know what I'm saying? Because most people read books for memory. I was reading books for mastery. Here's the thing. I didn't know any of this stuff was happening. This is everything I'm sharing with you is connecting the dots, looking backwards, and you can't see the picture. I was just doing things to keep my mind off the present moment. And I was just reading. And then I taught myself how to, learn fluent French. I stopped using my dominant hand and I started using my left hand, which I didn't know was operating a different part of my brain, and then got me to be to adapt again. So I just started creating and doing all of these things that I absolutely love that I forgot that I loved. I'm going to say that one more time. I'm in prison for 12 years. Regardless of my circumstance, I got back to doing things that I loved when I was a child, when I was the happiest the most. And that was running, singing, art. And when I was doing it just to bring joy to other people's lives. I'm going to say it again. It's very important that you get this. When I was taking what I loved as a child, when I was the happiest the most, An inmate says, every time you sing, it makes me feel free. So I was singing to bring joy to somebody else's life. And then I was painting and drawing portraits of other people's families, not asking for anything, just giving my gifts away, bringing joy to other people's lives, regardless of my circumstances. And when I started running, there was less fights, less drug deals, less stabbings, and I didn't know that I was adding more value regardless of where I was. So within a month time span, it went from 2 people running with me to 65 people running with me, to the point where the warden brought me in and saying, thank you for adding so much value. So here's how value works. This is why I feel I got out. If you understand how when there's a baby that grows inside of the womb and it grows too big for the womb, when it's too big for the womb, contractions start happening, and what once grew inside is now produced outside, which is the baby. Well, when I was in there, regardless of my circumstances, it's very important that you get this. I added so much value that it was overflowing inside of my own cup. And when you pour something over and over and over, it'll flow on the outside. Well, Garrain started overflowing so much that it was too big for the space that it was in. So what once grew on the inside, Jones, you're getting out next week. Out of nowhere, drugs are fake. You're free to go, was now produced on the outside.
Hey guys, so let me take a guess. You're enjoying the show. And if that's right, please make sure that you take a screenshot of you listening to the podcast right now and tag me at Shawn R. Anthony _. I promise you this is going to help in amazing ways. And while you're at it, hit the 5-star rating and subscribe. With that being said, guys, let's get back to the show. Wow, man. I mean, that story is so amazing. But I think what you really just told the audience, guys, I want you to really grasp this, is that you have to be able to add value. When you add value and your cup overfills, the way Garrain just broke it down is you're going to have opportunities to come to you that just seem like they came out of nowhere, that you birthed. Man, that's an amazing, powerful story.
It's something that if people truly got this, they actually wouldn't have to work so hard in life, because the working is actually with you and life isn't happening to you. It's responding to you. And so some things I tell people all the time, how do you make it look so easy? Well, I work on me more than anything. I don't work on me. I don't work on work more than on the outside. No, because I'm in reflection to everything in my life. So if I'm working on my mind, my heart, my body, my soul, and my spirit all the time to mastery, life it's a law. It has to respond according to how I see myself.
Man, I absolutely. And what I want people to grasp too as well is that you filled yourself with knowledge, right? Much different than what you did, in your early teenage years. You read over 275 books in 2 years. And what you're also well known and well famous for is reading one book, I think, over 320 times. Tell the audience a little bit about what that book was and what you think that did for you as well.
So there's a book called The Power of Positive Thinking, which I'm still reading, that talks about generosity, loving yourself, being kind to people, the basic human principles on how to be just an abundant human, period. And it's just the basics of life. And every single time I would read that book, all these amazing things would happen. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's like Bruce Lee says, fear not the man who practices 1,000 kicks. Fear the man who practices one kick 1,000 times. Well, I wasn't reading the book for memory. I would always hear people read all these books. I'm like, how are you still broke? And it was like, have you read Think and Grow Rich? It was like, yeah, I read that. What's the next book? I'm like, no, Think and Grow Rich, which means you've got to get it into your mind and you've got to implement it. So it's not memory and grow rich. It's think. So when I do it, I'm doing it so that I can actually become the book, live the book, be a mastery of the book. so that when you see me, you can clearly see that I'm honoring the principles that's inside of the book without even opening my mouth. And that's why I just kept reading it, because all these great things kept happening. And every time I stopped, it was almost like the weeds of your past. If your mind is a garden and the gardener is supposed to tend the garden all the time to keep the flowers fresh, well, then when you don't tend the garden, the weeds actually come and overtake the garden. So the weeds of your past, when you're not constantly renewing your mind, will come back, and then you'll be like, oh my God, how did I attract this again? This is old stuff. No, it's because you're not constantly refreshing your mind.
Yeah, you got to kind of keep feeding yourself the right things. And I think people also, like, you look at your story, right? You come out of prison, right? What was your first biggest break coming out of prison? Now you got this new mindset. You're a totally different person. What was your first break when you start, to see, financial abundance and health abundance, all of those things?
So here's the deal. The crazy thing is everything that I shared is from the perspective where I am now. When I did all of that, I just thought I was lucky. I didn't know. Again, you can't see the picture while you're in the frame. So I wasn't even aware of my way of being is the reason that life was responding to me like that. Like I feel like the universe becomes plastic according to the thoughts that you give the most power to. And so I didn't know that I was the cause of all of that until I was 32 years old. So imagine I got out when I was 22. 32 is when somebody said, oh, no, you got to keep reading books and you go to this seminar. I'm like, oh, that's why I got out. So I wasn't aware. However, I was still riding off that emotional high of building up such a mindset base of those 2.5 years, while I feel like the universe needed me to be still so I could learn these lessons. And I had, within 2 months, I had a $500,000 record deal with Ludacris.
Wow.
And I met him at a comedy store, and I told him, I had a friggin' 30 days. I had 28 songs because I messaged like 400 producers on MySpace, found one that believed in me with no music, and then we just kept going. Next thing you know, 3 weeks later, I had a $500,000 record deal. And I'm like, wow, I'm lucky. So I didn't know that I was of all that.
At that time, you weren't connecting the dots. I want people to really realize, Garrain, what you just said is that you're going to go through life, right? And things are going to start happening for you. But you really got to sit back once you're outside of that frame, right? As you just mentioned, and realize you did X to get Y. Right? You did those things in the past to become who you are today. I think it's just amazing that you just caught that. And so you had the record deal, 500,000, right? So how do you go from music to being so predominant in health? Did somebody tell you, hey, I think there's a bigger calling for you?
No, what happened was I always knew that I was supposed to be on stage. I always knew that I was supposed to be inspiring millions of people. But since I was little, music supported me in understanding how to be in tune with my emotions. However, when I was, there was so many people, I'm not going to put anybody out there, that just with big names that were very shady behind closed doors, and they're like, people you just gotta go through with it. That's just a phase you got to go through. Everybody, effing you over. I'm like, I don't think that you got to do this. And everybody was saying, oh man, I'm trying to get like you. You're talented. I'm like, I feel like I'm missing something. And then it got to the point where I wasn't making any money. I was eating nothing but fried foods and went back to old stuff. Stopped reading books. Ego set in. Girlfriend that broke up with me, my daughter, we had a horrible relationship, and it was all my fault. My mom was dying in the hospital. My brother was obese, and I just I tried to kill myself twice because I didn't know that there was a reason for living, and I was just dark, man. I was just super, super, super dark. And then one day, I got tired of saying, can it get any worse? And it getting worse. And then one day, it was August 2011 at 3:43 in the morning. I was living in my car for 2.5 years, 40 pounds overweight, always tired, gaining even more weight. Like I couldn't fit any of my clothes. And I'm just like, damn, man, I'm watching all of my friends succeed. What am I missing? And I'm more talented than them. I don't get it. What am I? It's this fault. It's my dad's fault. It's my girlfriend's fault. It's my this. And then I said, well, wait, maybe it's not any of their faults. Maybe it's me. Maybe I can't do anything about them, but I could do something about me. And that's when I just lost it. I was screaming in my car, eyes bloodshot. And I was like, okay, I'm tired of fighting. I don't want to fight anymore. I want to be healthy. I want to be happy. I want to be surrounded by nothing but positive people. I just want to inspire people. And I want to make a bunch of money, but I want the money to represent something that I passionately believe in, that I would do for free. Just show me a sign. A week later, I'm at the gas station and this homeless man asked me for money. And I say, you have more money than me. And all of a sudden he goes, change your mindset, change your life. Boom. Everything that I'd ever heard in my entire life in that moment seemed like I was lied to by society. I'm like, wait, my mind is set on something in that. And that's why the result is what it is. So if I do different with the same circumstance, then my life will change. So I just started doing the opposite of everything that I would normally do in areas of my life that I wasn't happy regarding to health, going to seminars, waking up early, all these different things. So it's been 8 years of me doing the opposite of everything that I would normally do. So I'm 8 years removed from something that was habitual, that was created from my childhood.
Wow. And then what I like so much about it, man, is that you just said what I think people need to really know. It starts with what you think, right? Your mind determines where, and even with your story, it goes back to every part of your story. What you were thinking is where you were at. And I want people that are listening to this, we have such, a young audience base that are growing through school to understand that you may be somewhere right now where you don't feel like you should be, but you can change that by changing your perspective. I want to ask you the question, Garrain. We ask every single person that's ever hopped on this show, right? If you were that former college student, right? That kid who just graduated, or perhaps you just dropped out, and you're asking yourself the question of the show, school's over, now what? What advice would you give?
What makes me happy? When you know what makes you happy, not what makes your mom happy, not what makes your dad happy, not what makes society happy, not what has you fitting in, not this runs in the family. Deep down at your core, what brings you the most joy? Like in life, like when you do it, you just light up. And what did you want to do when you were a little kid? When you were about 5 years old, that made you happy. There is genius power inside of the things that brought you happiness when you were a little kid. So when you actually go back to it, you'll notice a surge of energy and a surge of power flow through your body. And the way that I describe this is if you can imagine a little kid coming up to you saying, Mom, 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 Dad, Dad, and tapping on your shoulder, and you ignoring that child for 20 years, what do you think the relationship would be like? Well, that something is missing. I'll put it to you like this. The thing that you loved when you were a little kid that brought you the most happiest, let's just say that's your inner child. So every time that you don't honor what is in your heart, which is the most powerful frequency in the world, and you turn away from what generates life, you're actually digging yourself a grave, regardless if you make money. I've seen a bunch of people with a lot of money put a bullet into their brain, drink their lives away. That ain't living. That's just existing. However, when you think about the little kid tapping, saying, Mom, 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 and you ignoring, well, the thing that brought you the most joy whether I spoke to this girl, she was like, oh, I love to dance. When was the last time you danced? 20 years ago. I feel like something is missing, but I have a great career and a great husband. I feel like something is missing. I said, baby girl, sign up for a dance class today. Go tonight. And go tonight, because every day that you deny what brings you the most happiest, you're actually denying your inner child nourishment. So if you don't feed the plant, it will die. If you don't feed the child, it will die. So if you don't feed your soul child, that's what's missing. And so when she went back to it, she was like, I don't know. And so these random checks start coming out of nowhere. That's because I feel like your inner child, when you're aligned, mind, body, soul, heart, spirit, you're operating at full capacity. And it's like a spiritual umbilical cord to source energy to heaven. And it creates this ecosystem around your life. And that's the random people that come out of nowhere because you're activated.
100%, man. 100%, man. Ball knocked out of the park. I think when you go back and you look at, who were you when you were young? And because what's so cool about young kids is that they run with no fear. They run with no fear. They're not scared of nothing at all. And they have all the mindset of saying, you know what? I'm going to do what I want to do because I'm excited about what I'm doing. Man, I appreciate you so much for being on the show. And right now, if somebody's listening, want to find out more about you, where can they find you on all your social media platforms?
So you can definitely find me at my website, GarrainJones.com, GarrainJones.com, Instagram, Garrain.Jones. My book, Change Your Mindset, Change Your Life, it will be out in October. And it's about all of the experiences that I had. I extracted the lessons. I show how I applied it to my life, the results that it produced, and how you can apply it to your life. And it's a basic, everyday people's guide to understanding how to use the powers you already have so that you can live out your fullest expression of life so that you leave this earth without regrets.
100%, man. I appreciate you. And for those that have been listening, always remember, dream it, believe it, go out and get it. Yo, what you think? I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I want to know what you learned. So if you wouldn't mind, would you take a screenshot of you listening to the podcast on your phone right now? Upload to your Instagram stories, tag me at Shawn R. Anthony _, and then let me know in that Instagram story what is one thing that you learned. I love hearing from you, my listeners, thought leaders, former or current students all around the world. Let me know. And while you're doing this, go inside the podcast app, subscribe, leave a 5-star review and a 5-star rating. Again, this helps us reach more people. And if you want to be a part of this mission, helping us change the world one person at a time, it makes a massive difference by you leaving a review. Thanks so much. I'll see you next week. And remember, dream it, believe it, go out and get it.